Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We come to you virtually from Seattle and the great PNW. Listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here is the podcast for you. We like to call it the podcast of record. It's where street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host today is the intrepid Michelle Baumberger. Michelle, that's your new adverb name from here on in. Our guest today is Jay Scott, who may be intrepid himself. Jay Scott of 120 VC. Jay Scott is a CEO, founder, speaker, author, instructor, and a location-independent entrepreneur who's recognized as an expert in transformational leadership. Jay is a sought-after speaker for his unique, people-centric, and outcome-obsessed approach. I love that, outcome-obsessed approach to change what has generated breakthrough results and created meaningful jobs. Jay, we can't wait to learn more. Welcome to you. We'll be with you in just a minute. Everyone, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts: iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube. I like to say we are ubiquitous. We come to you from a whole bunch of different cities. Atlanta is the mothership, but we're also in Boca Raton and Boston and Charleston and a whole bunch of new cities as well. We kind of like ours the best, but don't tell anybody. Now, before we bring on Jay, hello, Michelle. Welcome back.
Hey, Dan. Great to see you.
Great to see you. It feels like it's been, I don't know, about a month.
That sounds about right.
And in that last month, Phil Simchich, as you know, is our one of our other co-hosts, and I were together on a business retreat up at Whistler, and we spent really 2 or 3 really great days with our mastermind group creating strategy. Have you started? I'm just curious. Have you started doing that for your business yet?
Well, I've been in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, for a number of years, and that's where I get a lot of my heavy thinking, but we are definitely in the midst of 2023 planning.
So I got a whole bunch of great stuff, and for today especially, I got great shit in my head now. I've got really a good place to go with it. But then I went on a trip to Denver to play some golf, and then I've had some other family things going this week, and it feels like all of that great stuff, the great shit, I ain't getting shit done, right? Have you ever felt like that?
Happens all the time, especially when you go to a conference and you walk out of that conference with all of your notes, all of your thinking, all of these ideas, and get back to your desk and look at those emails. And then the emails take over.
Because of you, we have somebody today who is going to talk about the transformative power of getting shit done. I am incredibly eager to talk to our guest, Jay Scott. Jay, welcome to the show. First and foremost, thank you for being here. And I need your help. How do I get my shit done?
So you think you just asked an easy question, but first let me say thank you, Dan, for having me. Michelle, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be on the Shrimp Tank today, talking about how to get shit done. So here's the thing. I'm going to say a couple of things. You're going to think that's totally obvious. And then you're going to realize, wow, though it may be obvious, most people don't do it. So it's easy to get stuff done if you're intentional about what you need to get done, and then you block the time to get it done. Whereas most people just rely on hope as a strategy. Ask them, though, they'll say hope is not a strategy, because we've all seen that movie like 10 times. However, if you observe when somebody goes to a meeting and they get tricked into saying, yes, I'll do that, which is the only reason anybody invites us to meetings, you'll notice that nobody ever picks up their smartphone, goes to their calendar, finds the next available white space, and blocks time to do that, yes, I will. They then say, yes, I will. They leave the meeting. They haven't blocked time, and they're just hoping that they'll get it done. So really, getting stuff done is easy. As long as you've
just described my life, just so you know. And actually, it's really funny because yesterday I was sitting in one of our planning meetings, and I have at the top of the sheet, what's most important. And underneath that are about 10 items. So even when people aren't giving me things to do in meetings, which happens regularly, and I say yes to way too many things, finding the time to do all the things that are most important is really challenging, especially in the role of a CEO, where it is kind of all on your shoulders. Can you talk a little about your experience in kind of working with leaders to kind of prioritize and lead their organizations through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's pretty much predominantly with my Fortune 1000 C-level executives all the way through the mid-market. The very first thing I do is work with them to identify their priorities and also acknowledge that it's okay to have more than one number one priority, but you can't have 20 because you just won't get to them. And they always say back to me, but Jay, I have to get to them. And then I ask them this question, are you getting to them? And they whisper, no. And I'm like, then stop abusing yourself. Let's really establish your priorities. And I use a tool called the 2x2 prioritization matrix. And what we do is we weight our priorities from high value, low effort to high value, high effort, which are usually the capital projects, to low value, low effort, to then high effort, low value. And that's the ignore delay category. So all the things that they want to get to, but it's like a lot of work for a low return. Getting people to put stuff into this category is hard. I think it's probably harder than getting into Harvard. But once people get in the habit of putting stuff in that category, it really frees them to then work the priorities. The second step, though, once you've got this 2x2 matrix, like everybody knows, if you have an MBA, put in a 2x2 matrix and it's gold, you have to break it out at least once a week. And look from your first number one priority on your high value, low effort, and block time next week to work those things, and then move to your selectively invest. So it really is about thinking through your priorities, and sometimes it helps to have a friend call you out on what you already know but won't admit, like you're not getting to them, so stop beating yourself up about it, or a coach or consultant. And then it's really developing that habit, like work it once a week, plan your next week. Is the trick to always having your number one priorities on your calendar. And maybe later we can then talk about what to do with the incoming and those types of things. But that's really the first step. Figure out what your priorities are, be realistic about them, categorize them, and then block time to work on them.
So you hit on something, Michelle. Before, Danny, I'm going to jump in here. You hit on something that I was going to ask you as a follow-up question, which is that accountability, right? Because it seems that in my role as the leader of this company, I should be able to hold myself accountable to getting the right things done. Yet what ends up happening is just the rolling of life and business, and it just doesn't happen. And so the idea of having an accountability partner, whether that's a fellow CEO or a coach or someone like that, step in to kind of support and keep you on track, I think is a great idea that many of us are maybe reluctant to step into.
Amen. We all need leadership. I need leadership as much as the people that I lead. And so if I can lean on them for that leadership where appropriate, I totally do, right? All leaders see what's next so they can help other people make what's new. I mean, what may not be obvious to us is obvious to others because they're not, what's the forest for the trees, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we need leadership as much as the people that follow us.
So you and I, Jay, we're in the same accord about the calendaring, and I talk to clients about that as well. In fact, actually, what I did is I put all of that cool shit that I talked about. It's on for next week because I've got some priorities this week with family issues, and so looking at those priorities. But I have a question for you going back to that because it's one of the things that I see over and over again is we can put it on the calendar, but we don't treat ourselves as clients. I wouldn't cancel a meeting with you, but I'm really good at canceling a meeting with myself. Just because I put it on the calendar doesn't mean I can't say, you know what, I can cancel with me. Me won't mind. I'm going to move it to here. Talk a little bit about that whole psychological thing and how can we create discipline around keeping appointments with ourselves?
Right. So you remember I said create the 2x2, so you're clear on your priorities. Then you create at least a 1 hour weekly recurring meeting that I call the focusing exercise. Again, thank you, Stegan Leadership Academy. I have to give credit where credit is due. And so if you respect that block, that one block, you're going to spend an hour going through your 2x2 and blocking time the following week to work on these things. when you put in the time and you are that level of intentional, the guilt that you feel when you don't respect your time block is exponential. It's not like hitting the snooze button, like, oh, I'm going to start working out at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you hit the snooze button. It's like you built the gym in your basement and you spent $10,000 and you put it all together yourself. You go to hit the snooze button, you're like, oh, it's harder. Two, as Michelle was just saying, an accountability partner is key. So my 2x2, I work my 2x2. Well, so I build a 2x2. I work my weekly focusing exercise, but then there's an update exercise where I meet with my leadership team weekly and we show our 2x2 and we give updates on where we're making progress on 2x2 items. And so I'm just as accountable to them about making progress on the items in my 2x2 as they are to me. So they all have 2x2s and they give me updates on their 2x2 items and I give them back. And so just us knowing that we're going to show up to this meeting and have to give status to people that we respect, more importantly, in their case, their CEO is showing them the same respect and being accountable. And what's funny about that is you think, so then they're more accountable, but that also makes me more accountable because like they're being accountable and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the CEO. Like I can't like not be accountable to my commitment. So wherever you can find that accountability, but again, this process is easy because if we're all using the same tool to prioritize, we're all using the same tool to then block time, even though our priorities are differently, but then we're also using the same tool to align on a weekly basis. So the accountability is built into the process. This exact same tool we use for personal productivity, for team productivity, as well as portfolio prioritization and productivity.
All right, I've already got 4 tips that I'm going to take back and start using tomorrow. So we're good there. And I'm sure you're full of many, many, many others. But I did want to kind of tap into something that Dan said in the introduction, that you are a location independent entrepreneur. Tell us more.
So I started 120 VC. Which was my first company and the company that's focused on delivering the transformative power of getting shit done. We deliver large global projects for companies. We help them optimize their own outcomes through coaching, education. And I've never had an office. Like I've always worked from home, but that said, I'm an avid sailor and avid explorer. My family and I probably put 6,000 nautical miles on a boat every year, in addition to all the overlanding we do. Starlink has been game changing. Maybe a problem also because there's no checking out when you can get internet anywhere. I'll see how that goes. But yeah, I run 120 VC, our marketing company, Brick and Matter, or BAMCO. And as soon as I get Next Jump Outfitters in Tacoma off the ground, essentially I'm remote. My family and I are remote all the time. The vast majority of my team members are remote. So when COVID hit and everybody was asking this question, like, how do we go remote? It was pretty easy for us to answer because the trick is leadership as opposed to management.
Well, I can't even believe that we've already gone into about 15 minutes. I've got so many things to ask you, but we do have to take a break to pay the bills. So we're going to take that short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Jay Scott, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out what he means by the status go. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And everyone, you get me once again as producer. Your business is a valuable achievement, your livelihood and your legacy. Every day, you are asked to balance business opportunities and legal risks, but engaging legal adds complexity and expense. You deserve to experience business law the way it should be: practical, responsive, approachable, and transparent legal solutions to support your business in every stage. With Equinox Business Law Group's general counsel services, you get a corporate legal department tailored to your business needs. Let us tackle those contracts, HR, partnership, and IP issues so you can get back to your most important work, seamlessly moving your business forward. To learn more about Equinox's fixed cost, all-inclusive legal services, visit their website at equinox.law or email contact@equinoxbusinesslaw.com. Equinox Business Law Group, business law the way it should be.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Michelle Bomberger here with Dan Whedon, and our guest today is Jay Scott from 120 VC Holdings. Now we're going to kick off our next segment, Hot or Not.
Jay, and as you know, this is where Michelle and I pepper you with questions. And boy, we probably have a wide sphere of questions we can ask. But I'm going to start with one that should be somewhat, I'm going to guess it's hot, but I'm going to need you to explain it. Hot or not, Jay, the status go.
Oh, that's hot.
What does
That's
that
hot.
mean? What is the status go?
So nobody hires a leader because they want their organization to be the same in a month, 6 months, or a year. Like in the olden days, and probably not that old, and people would hire managers, and their job was to ensure that everything went according to plan, and that nobody broke anything, and then everything was perfect. And in those models, quality was probably guaranteed, but innovation not so much, because they don't really want people to think as much as do and be perfect. And we're human beings. To innovate requires experimentation. So these days, the status quo is dead. If they bring you into an organization and they ask you to be responsible for a team, what they're asking you to be responsible for is constantly improving the outcomes, the results for the organization through the efforts of that team. So that's what leaders do. We enable our stakeholders to define and deliver the necessary and expected results, aka driving the status go.
So hot or not, peer leadership groups.
Oh man, to me, that's super hot. When you say peer leadership groups, I think you mean like support groups, peer support groups for leaders. Oh, so I joined Vistage after 15 years of being an entrepreneur and breaking my own boat. And you know, when you break your boat, and I'm using boat as an analogy for my business, when you break your boat, it's like, they used to say break off another 1,000. Now it's like break off another 10,000, especially when it's your business. I joined Vistage, had a great experience. Felt like EO was probably more my speed. I've now been a member of EO for 7 years, love EO, and I've literally taken that peer group model. I use it with my customers. I use it internal to 120 VC. When you join 120, you get a manager. We call them a practice lead. Their job is to help you be as successful as possible, be your trainer, be your coach, help you. But they also get a 4-person peer group that's moderated by another practice lead, not their practice lead. Confidentiality is king. And what they do is they show up and they work challenger opportunities together with one focus, and that's helping each other be as wildly successful as possible. I've seen this succeed not just within the peer groups that I'm a member of. Then again, I'm an EOA, Entrepreneur Accelerator peer group coach. And so I, who has an EO qualifying business, participate in accelerating those early stage entrepreneurs that want to qualify to join EO. And that's powerful for me. From these people who are just getting started, I learned so much. In fact, sometimes I'm like, oh, I've been doing this way for so long. There's a better, faster, stronger way. And I learned from them. So I just, Vern Harnish has a saying that I think is rad, and that's the knowledge is in the room. So as far as being able to meet with a diverse group of people and share confidentially my challenges or my opportunities and get experience shares back has been it's been a total game changer for my business, for my life. Like I said, it's even something that I felt passionately about providing to my team members. And they're having a great experience, by the way. They're like, I can't believe I get to do this at work.
I want everybody to know that you have an excellent website. I was stalking. I mean, not stalking. That's not the right word. But I was checking you out.
Not a weird way.
In a weird way. I was checking you out before, and I was going to ask this a hot or not, but I thought it was hot. So I'm going to have you expound and wax poetic on it. Communicating your accomplishments daily.
Okay. This is like a loaded one. I would say hot, it's hard. Really important, yes, right? Like spicy topic, I don't know. I think when you say that, like people are like, oh, communicate my accomplishments daily. Like that feels braggadocious. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a goalpost mover. I spent the vast majority of my career feeling unsuccessful. I used to say to my wife, like, I'm working so hard, I'm running this business, and my life isn't very different than anybody else's. I don't feel successful. And she was nice and didn't say anything. Years later, when I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like, I wasn't appreciating what was happening in my life. She's like, yeah, I just didn't know how to say you were sounding kind of crazy. And so, a couple of things. The vast majority of people in leadership positions, especially entrepreneurs, are like, they set a goal, and when they accomplish the goal, they move the goal. And then when they accomplish that goal, they move the goal. So essentially, never taking a minute to sort of appreciate what you've accomplished. The other thing, too, is I think it's important when I say communicate your accomplishments daily, this enables autonomy. You know, we talked about me being a location independent entrepreneur. Every single person on my team sends out what we call a daily status report. Every single person in your audience just went yuck. They're very, very short. The first section is 3 gratitudes, 3 real gratitudes. And this is super rad because in the old days when we didn't do the gratitudes, like they were hard to read. And now I'm like, I can't wait to see DSRs from my team members because I'm like, what are they truly grateful for? So we share gratitudes. And this is how we end our day. It's been a hard day. We're exhausted. Pausing to reflect on what happened today that I'm grateful for. 3 things. Then what did I actually accomplish? Not I attended this meeting, I attended that meeting, because attending a meeting is not an accomplishment. How did I move the needle? How many would anybody have? Like if you've got 3, you're like killing it in a day, like 3 needle moving accomplishments. Now that you know what you've accomplished, right? You're kind of keeping track. You're setting the tone. You're celebrating your successes. This helps us overcome stress. Our brains at positive are scientifically proven to be 20% more powerful than at negative, neutral, or stressed. And at stress, our brains are significantly diminished. Then the next thing we do is we think, okay, we look at our backlogs, we look at our calendar for the next day, and we think, okay, what 3 things do I need to accomplish tomorrow? Right? Like true accomplishments. What am I going to accomplish tomorrow? And then we send these out to our team and we copy ourselves. So think about when it comes to getting stuff done. One, it takes me 30 seconds to read my team's DSRs. I know how they're feeling. I know what they've gotten done. I know where they're going. If there's something I know because I had a conversation with a client that they don't know, I can tell it from their DSR. I know who to go to. Right? Like I know who to work with. I know who to enable. The rest, I leave alone. They have autonomy because we're tight on our communication. Then the other thing is we have them in our inboxes. So the next day, how often, Dan and Michelle, do you walk in the office, you have a plan for the day, and something has already happened that blows up your plan? If you're lucky, you get this thing that you didn't expect solved by lunchtime or maybe by like 1 o'clock, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what was it that I needed to do today? Do you feel that pressure right now when you're thinking back to that moment in your brain, how hard that is? Just the strain on your brain, like trying to get out of that situation, like what do I need to do today? That doesn't happen to us. We just open the DSR that we sent ourselves the night before and we're like, okay, so I'm not going to get all 3 of these things done. What's my top priority? I can get focused and I can get to getting stuff done.
So Michelle, I have a really quick follow-up. I love everything you said. One of the things that resonated was the celebrating successes. And you know that imposter syndrome is a thing. With CEOs. It's a thing with a lot of people, but it's a thing with CEOs. And I got to believe just from a confidence standpoint, doing this, communicating your accomplishments daily to yourself has to have that positive effect on confidence and on getting rid of any lingering imposter syndrome. That was supposed to be a question or I think there was a question.
Who are you directing this question toward, Dan?
Yeah, no, but I mean, would that be true? I mean, from a confidence standpoint, does that have the same desired effect?
So that is the idea, and it's helpful. Like I said, we're balancing the stress that we choose to put ourselves through by adding some sort of positivity, acknowledging that we're productive. Do I think it completely erodes imposter syndrome? Or here's the thing. Humility and arrogance at 2 opposite sides of the scale. Arrogant people don't feel imposter syndrome and generally are not very well liked, and I find tend not to be great leaders because they're playing for themselves as opposed to the team. Great leaders have a tendency to be humble, and humility is so easy to to shift to question yourself. Like I have humility, so I'm going to question myself. I have humility, and so when you're humble, it's really easy to fall into this imposter syndrome, questioning whether you should be here, right? So do we want to be humble? Absolutely. People want to follow humble, transparent people that are there to lift them up. However, when you're open to being fallible, it's easy, we're hard on ourselves. It's easy to be overly hard on ourselves, and so, does focusing on my gratitudes, does focusing on my accomplishments help me overcome the imposter syndrome? Yes. And imposter syndrome is losing these days more often than it's winning after I implemented this practice.
That's really interesting. So something that came to mind, hot or not, performance reviews.
Oh, like here's the thing, hot in a sort of way. Like, is that a thing with your hot or not? Like, should I say no? They're gross. I hate them, because that would be true.
They would not be hot.
Yes, they would not be hot. No, they're terrible. Nobody likes performance reviews, and it's really a terrible way to give feedback. Doug Stone, who is the king of feedback, wrote many books on giving feedback, and then found through his career and his research that the feedback receiver is 100% in control of whether they receive the feedback productively or discard it as unproductive feedback. And so the idea of waiting to give the idea of waiting to give somebody feedback once a quarter, once a year, or annually, meaning, and it's tied to money. Oh my gosh, like back in the olden days when we lived in caves, that fear that people might have felt like running from saber-toothed tigers, or if you're walking through an alley at night and you don't feel safe, that fear for your life. Not having money is what provides for our safety and security in this day and age, right? So when our money is threatened, that's the same as somebody putting a gun at our head. So we're going to sit down and review somebody's performance to decide whether we give them a raise or a bonus. Like this is abusive. It's terrible. On the other hand, if we as leaders stopped regarding constructive feedback as this terrible thing that we have to do because they're never going to like it, right? And we realize if we're willing to give somebody constructive feedback for them so they can be more successful, this is actually generous and kind, right? And so if we can start regarding giving critical feedback as generous and kind, we might actually deliver it as generous and kind, and we can do it regularly. So there's no reason for performance reviews in an organization where we're all leaning in and providing the feedback when the feedback is relevant to the people that need it. Have you guys ever waited to give feedback and now you've got like 3 or 4 offenses? I mean, I've done it too. We've all done it, right? Like, I wasn't always this wise. I mean, that is if anybody thinks I'm wise now, I don't know. But like I'd hold it and then I'd be like, hey, we got to talk because now I'm frustrated. Like now I'm going to do it. And so I deliver the feedback and I'm like, in this time, and they're like, God, it's been like 3 weeks. Why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, oh, wait, we're not done. Let me tell you about the one 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you the one 3 weeks ago. They're no longer listening. They're like, dude, you suck. Like, why didn't you just tell me the first time that it happened? So yeah, performance reviews, not hot. I'm getting this now. I'm getting the system. Hot, not hot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'm not going to go off the cliff and not do a hot or not. I just have a regular old question that stemmed from this. I had this flashback to when I first got into business 35 years ago, and under the old command and control and everything, performance reviews, all the things have changed, and I've seen them change in larger organizations. And I know that you mentioned Fortune 1000, larger companies. My fear is that in a lot of small business, and I'm talking, under 30 employees, under 20 employees, a lot of this doesn't get translated. How can a small business owner listening to this now say, boy, I need to make some changes? What can they do to improve their culture through this?
Oh my gosh, you ask really hard questions. Like, how do I give you a summary that's useful to your audience? So first and foremost, what you just asked me, changing culture, going from a I tell you do command and control culture to a leadership culture where instead of influencing outcomes with authority, you're influencing outcomes with influence. That is way harder in a Fortune 1000. And some of them are on a mission to actually do it. Some of them, like Whole Foods started with that leadership culture from the very beginning. And even though they are a Fortune 1000, they didn't have to like fix their culture. So like, we're told as leaders that we build a culture. We hire a culture. And culture resists changes. So I remember when I was a command and controller, because that's what I was taught. That's how I was raised. I was in the military. And somewhere along the line, I realized, wow, having a deep connection with people and helping them architect their own roadmap to a shared goal not only feels better because I'm setting them up for success, but I get better outcomes that way. Like, so I made this shift to what we're calling these days servant leadership. Half my team was like not in for that. They were like, nope, nope. You mean trust our team members and kind of let them do what they want, which is not exactly, I was saying trust them. I wasn't saying let them do whatever they want. Although I kind of did that and I almost went out of business, long story short. So for small business owners, it's much easier. And the shift is very simple. Management, you're a manager, you're an executive. And by the way, everybody needs leadership. I'd said this earlier, right? Our team members need leadership. I need leadership. Like we as leaders need leadership. The funny thing about leadership is it doesn't require any authority. The leader's the one that says, we should do this. And sometimes that's me as the entrepreneur going to my team and saying, hey, I've got a really good idea. We should do this. And when my team starts nodding and they're like, yeah, we should do that. My idea is validated. Then I'm going to look to them and say, cool, how do we do this? So I, as a leader, set the expectation. I let my experts figure out, not in a vacuum, like how, and as they're figuring it out, like if I don't get how what they're saying they're going to do is going to work, I'm going to challenge that, but I'm not going to tell them how to do it, because if I help them architect their own roadmap to accomplishing something, meaning I'm going to keep challenging until they come up with a way to get it done where I can see it, not how I would get it done, because how I'd get it done is optimized for me. I need them to do it the way that they would do it, because then it's going to be optimized for them. I just need to get it. I just need to understand how it's going to work. And this is what I'm describing as leadership. Doing that requires no authority. This is exactly what Martin Luther King did with the human rights movement, and nobody appointed him a leader. So there's the authority model where you'll do it, you'll work really hard because I have authority over you. It's not motivating. And then there's and you can have authority and just choose not to use it. Like, leverage the collective IQ. Go to your team members and say, look, hey, I've got a great idea. Encourage them to be the leader. Hey, Jay, I've got a great idea. Now, in that scenario, I'm going to shift it right back to them. Great idea. I want to invest. How would you accomplish this great idea? And I'm going to go into the architecting their roadmap to the shared goal. Leadership requires no authority. Leverages the collective IQ. Innovation is possible.
Man, I'm taking mental notes all over the place, Michelle. It's coming out my ears. But what we have to do next is we have to take our second and last short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Jay Scott, for our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, and by the way, no help from Michelle on this, Jay, sorry. Our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're gonna ask Jay about Don Corleone. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our wonderful corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, Kitsap Sun Newspaper Group, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Please visit our new and improved website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we're interviewing the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Michelle Bomberger here with Dan Whedon and with our special guest today, Jay Scott from 120 VC Holdings. Jay, are you ready for Plead the Fifth?
Let's do this.
All right. He's on the hot seat right here. We're going to dive right in. You heard me mention Don Corleone. Plead the Fifth, Jay. Do you ascribe to the Godfather way of doing business? It's not personal, it's business.
Can I just say hell no? I do not ascribe.
We've already said shit. We can say hell. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's the hells to the no.
Keep it in the family. We got to keep it in the family.
Here's the thing. There's nothing more personal than business. Like people talk about a company as if it's like this thing that has a heart that breathes. It's a legal document. It doesn't become something real until you bring people together to work together to get something done, right? Like it's never just business. It's about people, to the point where I had to write a book titled "It's Never Just Business, It's About People." And the other thing too is people talk about driving change. They need their business to operate differently. They need the business to get different results, and they think they're talking about the things. No, your business is optimized for the results that it's getting. If you want your business to get different results, you need the humans in their organizations to perform their jobs differently. And if they're not excited about performing their jobs differently, they absolutely will not. So it's not about the stuff that you deploy like in the project. It's not the stuff, it's the people. So I deploy the thing, the financial system, I deploy the CRM, cool, nothing's changed until the people start using the CRM or the financial system to get different results. Leadership is a fundamentally human endeavor. You're there to help the humans get the best possible results. And when those humans get the best possible results, your business is thriving and then you're thriving. If you approach it like the widget, if you approach it like in an effort to be efficient, you're not going to get the best results out of the humans. Your business isn't going to get the best results. You're not going to get the best results. So it's never just business. It's about people.
So in this conversation today, you've alluded to a few sort of elements of your background. And I'm curious as to what inspired your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, arrogance. Hands down, hands down. It was like, I don't even know what happened. I think about this sometimes. Like, here I am, like 3.5 years out of the Navy, high school dropout, super lucky to have this awesome job, and it was an awesome job. I'm like 26 years old. I have an American Express Platinum card. I get to go to all the concerts, all the movie openings. I have my own golf cart to drive around the Universal Studios cart. And there was this guy named Chad Olson, who is a dear friend. He just left and like started his own company, and he started providing services to Universal Studios. And I just was so impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, it's that easy to start a company. I never thought about starting a company. And then he did like a weird thing. Then he closed his company after making a whole bunch of money, and he came back to work, and now he's at Disney, right? So he came back to Universal Studios. He's at Disney. Anyway, fast forward, it's 2000. I had just finished leading one of Universal Studios' largest most successful global projects, and they did a reorg. So here I am, 27 years old. These people from, I forget the name of the entertainment company that came in and bought Universal at the time. They bring in their old guard, and here I have these probably mid 50-year-old people that in the vice president position that I'm reporting to, and they're looking at me like, hey, he's just a 27-year-old kid. And so they were like, well, here's your new job. And I was like, check this out. I just quit. I don't even know what I was thinking. Like, I just was like, well, screw you. Like, I'm going to go start a company. Are you listening to me? Like, that's just crazy. So I did, and it worked out. And I had no idea probably like for the first 5 years how lucky I was that all that worked out. So honestly, like, I didn't know what I was getting into. It was hubris. I don't know. Yeah, that's it.
I got to tell you, I absolutely love that because I think there's a lot of us who could look back and say, yeah, it was hubris that got it. I think there's always going to be a certain part of that. But that being said, I'm going to put you back. I'm going to put you into the DeLorean, Jay. You're going to go back in time to when you were 17 years old, and you get just a second to talk to your 17-year-old self. What piece of advice, what bit of wisdom, what would you tell 17-year-old Jay?
Oh, to do exactly what he did and join the Navy and get away from it all. That was a really good decision. Yeah.
Anything, I mean, any other type of wisdom. So you join the Navy, anything else that you should be prepared for?
Yes, because what I got from the Navy, so I grew up in gangland neighborhood in Los Angeles, had really a dysfunctional family situation. What joining the Navy did for me was first, it gave me freedom. And the Navy, like most military branches, they'll let you do anything you want to do that you'll volunteer to do. It doesn't matter how dangerous it is. If you volunteer for it, they'll let you do it. And so I was able to be curious and start exploring. And so, and in that, I developed confidence. Probably a little bit too much, probably arrogance. But I developed confidence. Like, I ended up volunteering to go to Naval Rescue Swimmer School. I got through Rescue Swimmer School, and literally I got through Rescue Swimmer School. And I remember thinking, I cannot believe I got through Rescue Swimmer School. Because I joined, like, again, super impulsively, not like weighing whether I could finish or not, or if I was fit enough, right? And I got through. And I was shocked that I made it through because it had the second highest attrition rate to the Navy SEALs from a special forces program perspective. And so what I would tell any 17-year-old is don't be afraid to fail. I would say be curious. Like even to this day, there's so much that I learned by interacting and being curious about other people that I didn't know was out there. Like I'm 50 in a month or two, and the more I'm curious, the more I engage with people and the more I engage with the world, the more I learn I don't know. And it's just it's great. Like curiosity has served me my entire life. It's probably my secret recipe, the superpower. Like go out there, be curious about people and things, experiment, and don't worry about failure. We talk about failure like it's a nuclear bomb. Like you do it once and it's all over. No, it's like a skinned knee. Failure is like a skinned knee. Even epic failure is like a skinned knee. It's gonna heal. Don't cry about it. Just get up and try again.
I wish we could continue this conversation for much, much longer because I have taken copious notes, not only in my head, but on the paper next to me. But unfortunately, we do need to close. I want to say thank you so much for being a guest here on the Shrimp Tank. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you or learn more about 120VC or your other businesses, how can they get more information?
So 120VC has a YouTube channel, and we've got all kinds of videos and resources for people that want to get shit done. Next Jump Outfitters has a YouTube channel. So for people that are adventurous and they want to see what other people are doing from an adventure perspective to give them ideas for adventures, Next Jump Outfitters has a YouTube channel. And then I'm super open on LinkedIn. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn and you say, hey, I heard you on the Shrimp Tank podcast, as long as you don't try to sell me anything, I'm happy to connect with you and share what I've got going.
Great. Thank you so much. I look forward to checking out those YouTube channels and all of the deep knowledge that you share. For our listeners, definitely check out Jay's content online and check out our replays at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle or wherever you get your podcasts, SoundCloud, Apple, iHeartRadio. Please also follow us on our show's social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Jay, thanks for jumping on. We're definitely I think we're gonna make a promise to come back because we definitely want to hear more from you. That was a lot of fun. Thanks very much, Michelle. As always, great to see you. We'll see you again next month. Everybody, do exactly what Michelle says. If you go to our Facebook page, you can like us. You can watch every live stream because we do it each Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Our next show will be Wednesday, October the 5th. Our guest will be Michael-Ann Valterra. Craig Swanson is going to be my co-host that week. In the meantime, please be safe, be well, be prosperous. And when you skin knees, it's not that bad. Get right back up because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the